Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to accelerate your data ops and cloud journey with the latest Control-M and Helix Control-M integrations. My name is Gabe Geller, and I'll be your moderator. Today, I'm joined by our discussion leader, Joe Goldberg, who's a Principal Solutions Marketing Manager here at BMC. The presentation and demo we're going to show you today should last around 30 minutes, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So definitely feel free to submit questions at any time during the webinar. Just use the question section of your control panel. Before we get started, a couple of quick housekeeping items. You can download a copy of today's presentation and some different resources through the handout section of your chat panel, and we'll also send you an email after the webinar with links to the presentation. If you haven't already, recommend maximizing your window so that you have a better view of the presentation and demo. And with that, Joe, over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Gabe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Thanks for taking the time. As Gabe mentioned, I'm going to go through a little bit of a discussion and then go into a demonstration of some of the concepts that I'm covering. I'd like you to just be aware that this is a very sort of a specific orientation for the topics that we'll be discussing. We're looking at this sort of through the lens of data and cloud engineering personas, and some of the discussion, I guess, will lead into that. So data and cloud, I think, are linked very, very tightly in almost every organization. Excuse me. I think some of the major initial investments that were made in cloud were driven by a desire to extract more value and business insights from data. And so these two topics are, I think, very closely aligned, and we're going to kind of speak about this from that perspective. So looking at this from a data perspective and what has emerged as sort of a new discipline, which is data ops, companies are spending vast amounts of money. They're making huge investments in data and analytics, again, driven by the desire to extract business value, business insights, respond to competitive pressures, deliver new services to their customers. And the vast volumes of data that's being generated by our society in general, by every business, by every device that we have, is offering opportunities for learning and understanding one's business models, one's customers, and so every company is highly desirous of being able to gain those kind of benefits. But as you can see from this graphic, the level of sort of success or the return that companies are getting out of their investment is significantly out of whack, and certainly most companies would like to see the graphic on the right be a much, much higher percentage. And what this has fueled is a new focus on how you actually operationalize and bring new applications, data applications, into production, almost without exception, using cloud services. And so another sort of observation that both the market in general, analysts, and that we have seen from discussions with customers is that the level of cloud investment is also huge as part of this move to data ops. So what we have also seen is, again, data ops as a discipline and as a market segment. This, I think, is sort of underscored by the fact that Gartner, who today is primary or a major, certainly, analyst organization in the marketplace, has created a market guide for data ops. This is one way that they indicate that there is an actual market that is called data ops. Certainly cloud and general cloud engineering doesn't require anybody's confirmation that it is a market. It's huge, and pretty much every enterprise is using at least one and frequently multiple clouds. In the discussion of what are the the components of data ops. How do you become more successful? How do you achieve better results with your data initiatives? There certainly are quite a number of factors, but one of them that has become a great area of focus. Excuse me, I have a lingering cough. One of the areas is orchestration. And this is, of course, a very critical topic for us in the Control M business. And so that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on in this discussion. So, like so many other things that happen in technology, a focus on a particular topic has both positive and negative connotations. So the fact that there is so much emphasis on orchestration has kind of led us to a situation where there really is such diversity. It's kind of almost like an embarrassment of riches as far as orchestration is concerned. Almost every cloud service that is being consumed, or certainly many cloud services being consumed by organizations, have embedded orchestration capabilities. The number of orchestrators that have emerged in the marketplace, again, you can see this slide, which is just an extract of the number of tools that organizations are turning to, again, to try and improve their outcomes in the data space. But what has happened is that most of these tools are data focused, and many organizations are finding themselves that they have actually selected, really kind of by default, quite a number of these, and they're using them simultaneously. The desire to improve the success and the performance of data teams and the data applications that they're creating generally or frequently has led organizations to allow those data teams to select the tooling and the technology stack that they feel is going to make them most efficient. But what happens is that eventually those data applications do wind up in a production environment. And now you have either centralized, or even if they're multiple ops teams that are responsible for managing this diversity. And of course, they're again faced with many challenges. Number one, these tools do not communicate with each other. They're really all independent tools with their own approach to how you do orchestration. And so if you have an organization that is using multiples, even if it's just one or two or three, there's an immediate challenge of staffing and knowledge and visibility just within the data space. In fact, one of the quotes that we commonly include in these kind of presentations, which came from a very large organization that has hundreds of applications, data applications in production, and they find that when a problem occurs, it's very difficult for them. They're challenged to be able to determine where the problem is, how one application may interact with another. You then fold that entire problem into what is a typical enterprise, which already has quite a number of different tools. And so you have the situation where, as these data applications are becoming more mainstream, going into a production environment, or as they're maturing as an application within an organization, they have to interact with some of the traditional, quote unquote, business applications that are already running. And the challenge, of course, is that these data specific orchestrators are really kind of a silo unto themselves, and they don't know or don't provide capability to interact with the other applications that have existed. And this kind of situation is what contributes significantly to the graphic we saw at the beginning, where although there is massive investment, the level of success is actually stunningly low. And what we're seeing as trends in the industry is actually contributing to make the situation worse. So additional orchestrators, additional tooling is exacerbating the problem rather than addressing it. And so what we want to talk about today is our approach to addressing this problem with Control-M. So very, very briefly, for anyone who may not be familiar with Control-M, it is a workflow orchestration solution for orchestrating business applications and data pipelines. It's been in the marketplace for several decades. And today, Control-M provides a very broad range of support for applications and infrastructure. And we believe that the solution that we provide allows you to really bridge these two worlds and to address the problem that I've been describing, which is a way to see end to end what is going on in your environment, how different applications interrelate. If there's a problem in one, how that may either cascade or be the root cause for problems that you may see downstream. Some of the most challenging operational problems relate to situations when nothing is happening. Everything seems to be okay, but there's a problem somewhere. That component of your business service somehow was not connected via tooling to what you are looking at and observing, and so you simply just don't see what is not part of the span of control, if you will, of that application. And so this is the situation that we believe Control-M addresses. Now, in order to be able to incorporate into our view and into the scope of what Control-M can manage, providing integrations with services is critical. And so that's really the topic of what we're going to talk about for the next several minutes, which is the excuse me, the multitude of services that are available today, both from cloud providers or hyperscalers, as well as third parties and components of what we, by today's standard, maybe describe as the modern data stack. So this is the latest sort of set of integrations that Control-M has provided support for. And you may notice in the bottom right-hand corner that there are new integrations that are delivered every single month. Now, this is really, in our view, a critical capability that we are providing, where you can now plug into the Control-M sort of control plane, if you will, all of these integrations in a way that is consistent with the way you use and manage Control-M today. And so the providing of these integrations and continuing to enhance them is a key component of enabling Control-M to be able to see all of the complexity and all of the diversity in your organization. Now, we have also heard quite a number of, let's say, objections or challenges that we want to deal with, and some of these I want to discuss within the context of the demo that we're going to be doing momentarily as well. So if you have Control-M in your environment today, one of the struggles that we are addressing with material like this webinar and the kind of material that we publish is that, as I said, Control-M has been in the marketplace for quite a long time. And frequently, people who are not very familiar with the capabilities of Control-M consider it to be a tool that only works in more traditional environments and does not support the modern data stack. And so one of the issues that we want to deal with and to address head on is the fact that Control-M provides support for pretty much all of the modern integrations or the services that you would expect or need to be able to incorporate in a modern data pipeline or any kind of a workflow orchestration solution. People have been using Control-M for a long time. Sometimes or frequently they hear from users within their own organizations comments like, well, yeah, it's a traditional tool made for a certain category of users, but we as cloud engineers or data engineers, we prefer to use APIs. We want to take an as-code approach, and we're switching or have already evolved to DevOps or CI/CD practices. And so, their perception is that maybe Control-M doesn't provide those capabilities. And again, hopefully you'll see in the demo that that is absolutely not the case. We have a huge diversity of options available for users. Similarly, to support these kinds of engineering processes and these kind of users, you can create environments very quickly. Of course, if you take or you look at the Helix Control-M solution, which is a SaaS-based solution, you don't even need to create an environment at all. That's taken care of for you entirely. And you can have complete control and ownership of it. And so if your engineering teams need or want to have that level of control, there's certainly it's quite possible. It's something that you can provide for them very easily. If they don't want to learn Control-M, again, Control-M does come in a self-hosted as well as a SaaS-based solution. We also provide an appliance for unit testing and in early stage testing that you can use. Developers generally want to be able to work in a self-service manner without having to rely on anyone else, and we certainly have the ability to satisfy that requirement as well. And also from a centralized or an IT ops perspective, frequently developers and engineers are not experts in how to construct workflows for a production environment. They either need assistance or they need some guidance. They certainly are not in a position to simply just start working with a tool and create what could be production quality artifacts. And so Control-M has a variety of tools and mechanisms to provide standards enforcement, to provide guidance, to provide templates. And so, these are the kind of objections that we hear when we discuss using Control-M in a cloud or data focused environment. And so I want to go through a short demo in the few minutes we have left, and then maybe open this up for discussion in case you do have any questions. So let's do that, okay? So I will open, in my case, I'm using VS Code. Of course, you can use any IDE or text editor or really, however you want to create some kind of either code, or you can even open up a command prompt and operate that way as well. But what I'd like to go through is to show you two additional, again, depending on how familiar you are with Control-M, I'd like to show two additional options for working with Control-M that you may not be familiar with, which is JSON, which is our as code approach, of course, and using Python as well, or the Control-M Python client. So what I've done is just selected kind of a random subset of integrations that I mentioned. In this case, I have Azure Data Factory, AWS's Glue and Glue Data Brew, and a GCP service, which is Dataflow. Now, in a Control-M world, and this is true pretty much for all of our integrations, there are two objects that are required in order to compose a workflow for an integration. One is what we call the connection profile. This is the set of information that Control-M requires to connect to a service and interact with it. It might be credentials, it might be an endpoint or set of endpoints, and some other application level characteristics. Once you have a connection profile, you then can create jobs. And so that's what we have here in front of us. First of all, this is a set of connection profiles, as you can see, for the particular integrations that I've chosen. Again, each one is a little bit different. There are a number of different options. They all support cloud-based authentication. So in the case of, let's say, Azure, you can either provide an app registration and a client secret, or you can provide, or you can run this on an Azure VM where an agent is deployed and use the managed identity associated with that Azure VM. I've chosen to use a service principal here with a client secret. Note that I can code or refer to a secret that has been stored in my control M environment using secrets so that I'm not exposing my secret in text this way. Excuse me. Now, the things that are important here is, first of all, this is JSON. So relatively standard and very familiar to anyone who works with RESTful web services or REST APIs. This is kind of the standard language of REST. And of course, it's code. So once you code this, you can commit this to a source control like GitHub or Git or GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever you happen to use, but it's code. And however you manipulate code, you can now manipulate this as well as pretty much all other control M artifacts. The idea simply being that if you are an engineering person, or if you are an ops person and your engineering folks are asking you how they can work with Control M, the answer is the way you work with all other components of your application. If you think about a business application, there's going to be code written either in Java or Python or whatever the language of choice is. There may be configuration information, there may be infrastructure information, all of it as code. You now can add the Control M information, what we would refer to as the operational instrumentation, also as code. So here we have connection profiles. I've coded 4 here, and here is the JSON for the jobs that are going to use those connection profiles. So again, you can see the job types. The general format of our JSON is minimalistic, meaning that you only have to code what is necessary. Anything that's a valid default will default to those values. And so you can see the structure here. The structure of job definitions is there's a folder. Then within the folder, there's a series of jobs. And so that's this primary section of JSON that you're looking at. And at the very end, there's something called flow definitions that I can code, which is a simplistic or straightforward way to define relationships without having to code what in the Control M parlance is called either conditions or events. You can code them if you wish, but this provides a simpler alternative. In addition, I can also code some defaults. So if there are some things that I do want to include in every job, like notification, for example, like the job fails, I want to get an email, I can code that once in the default section, and it will apply to all of them. For both the connection profiles and jobs, as well as a number of other artifacts like policies, users, calendars, you name it, anything that you create interactively, you can also create via code. I have the CTM CLI. This is a CLI that we provide that implements our RESTful web services so that I can communicate with Control M. If you think about this from a cloud perspective, every cloud has a similar structure. You can either use their console or portal, which would be like the graphical interface or the web interface for Control M, but you can also use either RESTful web services or REST APIs out of code, or you can use their CLI. So, Azure has the Azure CLI or AZ, and AWS has the AWS CLI, and GCP has G Cloud. This is really the same kind of structure. CTM is our CLI. Just to show you a number of services that are available with the CTM CLI, if I were just to hit that and hit enter, you can see sort of the major sections which really map directly to the areas of domains in the UI that you might be familiar with if you're a Control M user. So if I built this and I want to validate So let's first validate the connection profiles. Okay, this will tell me if my syntax is correct or not. And of course, if there were errors, I'd correct it and then iterate. If I want to then deploy it or check it in, then I would use the deploy service. And so I would now commit or deploy my connection profiles. I would then do the same with my jobs. I could build those jobs. Excuse me. So if I was an engineer and I was coding these and iterating through them, if there were errors, I'd be notified of the errors. Otherwise, I can, when I get a successful build, I can either deploy them, which just checks them in and then run them, or in a single operation, I can check them in and run them. When I do that, I get some run ID that allows me using the CLI to look at the status of these jobs, but also to make this a little friendlier. Hopefully, I guess I must have timed out. Let's see if I can log back in. So this is my sandbox environment that I'm using. It happens to be a Helix Control M sandbox. Sandboxes are generally intended as environments for development and testing. And I've run these before, so we may see a few other instances of this, but let's slide over and take a look at what we have running. And so this is the sequence of jobs that I just requested or selected for running. Okay, so you can see how I've constructed this flow out of code. These are the flow statements. You may have noticed that I had a right and a left sort of branch. So these are the branches. I'm not going to spend too much time on Control M. Hopefully some of you are familiar with this interface, but if you're not, this is the graphical view. You can also get the very same information as a response. Whoops, sorry, I didn't copy that. Let me copy that. And I can request this kind of response from Control M in a tabular fashion, which I can then operate on. It's a JSON response, do whatever I need to. I'll just spend a minute or two looking at these so you can see yellow means jobs are executing, green is completed successfully. This is my data pipeline. I'm pushing some data in an S3 bucket to Redshift. I'm then invoking an Azure Data Factory and a Data Brew recipe to clean up some of that data. I have integration with Airflow. So if you are using Airflow for some of your data pipelines, but you want to gain visibility of those data pipelines within the scope of what could be either other kind of pipelines or traditional applications, of course you can do that. And all of that is kind of wrapped up in a service, which allows me to define the parameters for a business service, such as SLAs, exposing it via mobile apps to my business users, and a variety of other capabilities, all of which are standard for Control M, available to all of the jobs. So I'll let that run for a little bit, and let's return to VS Code. So again, this was a very quick flyby on JSON and using JSON to construct artifacts and how you would operate on it. But if you are a Python programmer and you'd like to be able to do the same thing in Python, because after all, Python has become pretty much the de facto standard for certainly for data and all data related applications, but it also has become exceedingly popular really for any kind of engineering undertakings. And so just as I have done, I separated my connection profiles and jobs into two separate JSON files just for convenience. In the case of Python, I put them together. So here I create my connection profiles. I have methods to operate on all of the different job types. I then create a bunch of jobs. Again, if you were to compare this with JSON, you would see the very strong similarity. So if you know one, it's very easy to move to the other. And I would run this way. Hold on, let me check real quick to see if this is still running. We should be okay. All right, real quick. Okay, so my connection profile construction was successful. I've added some of the sort of monitoring, if you will, here, just so we can see what it's like. But really, let's go back to our graphical environment, and we'll see that, okay, this is the Python set of artifacts that I just requested. And it's exactly the same jobs. One set constructed using JSON, another constructed using Python. And really the only difference is the name of the folder so that I can distinguish which is which. And that was for the purposes of the demo. So hopefully this has given you a very, very quick sort of introduction to how you can use Control-M. This has been really focused on the new integrations that we have been providing. But if you have ERPs or file transfers or mainframe jobs or any other traditional applications, and you want to be able to manage them in the same way, with the same tooling and the same solution, and applying all of the same capabilities and processes that your organization has been managing and enhancing and evolving over decades, this provides a very easy way to do that and to preserve all of that investment, as well as to take advantage of a solution that lets you see across the complexity of your entire technology landscape. Let me return quickly to slides and just mention a couple of things. So all of the things that I've described are either documented or samples and tutorials are available. And hopefully you noticed at the beginning, Gabe mentioned that you can download this deck, and all of these have links to that material. So this is an introduction, of course. There's lots more that is available. If there's anything that you don't see or have any questions about any of this, please feel free to reach out to me and contact me. I would be thrilled, very happy to talk to you about any of the things that I touched on very briefly in this quick webinar. And at this point, back to you, Gabe.
All right, Joe, thanks so much. Really good information. So we've got a lot of good questions that are already coming in, and we'll dive right into Q&A with the time that we have left. The first question, Joe, I see is, so how can someone be notified of new integrations, or where can they find a complete list of all the existing integrations?
Okay, great. So yeah, considering the pace that we're delivering these integrations at, it's good to be able to keep track of them. So these integrations are fully supported components of the Control-M solution, and however you are notified about any updates, there's I forget if we call it proactive notification. It might have been changed, but there's a process within support where you are notified of releases, updates, patches, and new capabilities. So by all means, take advantage of that. But I also would like, just in case you don't have access to that, or you don't want to add any more to your mailbox than you already have, I think if you go to bmc.com, so very quickly on the Control-M page, at least I think very quickly. So there's an integration section, and this gets updated. It's perhaps a few days after the release of this, but certainly these are all there. Additionally, I think if you go to any one of these, I'm just poking around here, but I think this integrations page, so if you see here over on the left-hand side, this is a list actually sorted by date. So I landed in a very specific integration that I selected from the bmc.com page, but you can come directly here and you can see all of these as well. So I think a couple of different ways that you can keep track of these, or at least explore if one is available, if for whatever reason you haven't been made aware of it prior.
Awesome, thanks, Joe. Another question here. This one is someone from an IT ops team. So they're saying, hey, it's great that our engineers can orchestrate their services with Control-M, but how do the ops teams then deal with all that complexity?
Okay, so I think when we put this webinar together, or actually maybe just in the last day or so, I realized that that's probably something we should have mentioned in the webinar itself. I think I mentioned it verbally, but of course, all of these jobs and all of these new integrations are standard Control-M jobs. So if you use a web UI, which is the standard Control-M user interface these days, that is intended for really any kind of user, but probably appeals most to sort of power users in ops teams and teams that are responsible for monitoring and maybe even creating Control-M or managing Control-M artifacts. The beauty of Control-M is, one of the things you may have heard us talk about when we describe Control-M, we say a job is a job. The fact that once you know how to build or monitor or manage any Control-M job, anywhere between 85 to 99% of what you need to know to manage pretty much every job. And so this is true with all of these integrations. What I was showing are alternatives that we heard that appeal particularly to engineers, and what we've heard from customers that their engineering groups and development teams ask them for these kind of facilities. But you can also build all of these jobs in a very traditional way, just like any other Control-M jobs. You connect them into flows using drag and drop, just like you do any other jobs. When you look at them in the monitoring domain, as we kind of did very quickly here, all of the different sections of job information, logging, output, statistics, waiting information, all of them are going to behave exactly the same way as the jobs that you're familiar with. So, again, if you have any questions and want to discuss that further, or you'd like to see a more traditional demonstration of how you can manage these very same jobs together with the usual jobs that you're familiar with, certainly be happy to do that.
Got it. Thank you. So next question is, and I see a number of questions about specific integrations, but just to sum them all up, if there's an integration that's not on the list that a company's interested in, what can they do, or what are their options to try to find out more information?
Right. So, of course, all of these integrations, at least the order in which they were delivered, has been driven by customer requests and requirements. I think we do I think a great job. We certainly try as best we can to gather information and requirements from customers. So if there's an integration that you don't see that you require, please let us know. And the chances are very good that if you need one, other customers are going to need it too, and it will definitely make it onto our list. However, there are a couple of other options that you have immediately. These integrations are actually being built by an R&D team that is using Application Integrator. Now, the benefit of them using, and by the way, sorry for anyone who's not familiar with this, Application Integrator is a component of the Control-M solution. So every customer has access to it and they can use it. The benefit of the R&D team, of course, using Application Integrator and building these integrations is that these are official components of the Control M solution, fully supported by BMC. However, if you have an immediate need and time is a major consideration and you need an integration like this, certainly you can either build it on your own using Application Integrator, or we would be happy to work with you. And then we can take what you have constructed or that we have constructed together and then pass it on to our R&D team, and they can evaluate it, perhaps improve it, and then turn it around and create a formal integration that they would deliver. So there are a couple of alternatives, even if the integration is not available today off the shelf, so to speak.
Got it. Thank you. Another IT ops focused question. So this person's saying, hey, look, our engineering teams love to use their own tools. Any suggestions on how we can convince them to give Control M a try?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get that all the time. And generally, of course, it's not always true, but generally, I would say that when teams in organizations that are using Control M make choices to use other tools, frequently it's because they're just simply not familiar with Control M in general and what Control M can do. Or they may have, if you saw some of those, series of questions I posed about, have you ever heard this? That, especially in an organization that might have been using Control M for a long time, there is an assumption that Control M is not evolving or is not being kept up to date, which, of course, hopefully this webinar has shown you is certainly not true. But we have a program that we call a Tech Day. It's a way to hopefully have you invite your engineers, development teams, product teams, and we will run or work with you to run a session and maybe a series of sessions that allow those folks to actually get their hands on the things that I showed you today and to use them, and allow them to really not only learn Control M, but to compare Control M to the tools they're using. And I would even go as far as to say that frequently when we have done this with customers, those development and engineering teams have been very, very pleasantly surprised and sometimes shocked, because the challenge, and again, this is what I spoke about at the beginning of this webinar, the challenge for operationalizing applications is that the things that are required to operate an application in production, those generally haven't changed that much. You need visibility, you need the ability to perform operations on running tasks, you need the things like standards and notification and email capabilities, reporting, auditing, security. These are things that Control M has been developing for decades. And these new tools, which perhaps some of the people who are not familiar with Control M have heard about and maybe even used and learned, those tools are still evolving, and sometimes, frequently actually, they don't have a lot of these kind of capabilities. And so, we certainly believe that it's easier to add support for these new technologies to a solution that already has the operational capabilities than the other way around, which is the way these other new tools are kind of coming into the market, which is built to support some of the integrations, but then they have this monumental task of providing the operational capabilities, which are certainly not easy to add. So by exposing teams to Control M in a way that lets them experiment and to see some of these capabilities, we have seen some really kind of startling results.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Joe. Man, there's so many good questions coming in. Unfortunately, we're at the top of our 45 minutes. So what Joe and I'll do, we'll definitely take all of these questions and follow up directly with you to get your answers. And we'll probably even take all of these questions and put together some kind of a blog and communities where everybody can access and get all the answers other people ask. So Joe, thank you so much for presenting really interesting information. Especially thank you to all of our attendees. We know you're very busy, and we thank you for choosing to join us today. We do have a number of other webinars and live and on demand that'll be coming up throughout the winter and into early next year. So keep an eye out for those, and thank you for joining. That concludes today's webinar.
Take care all.